This is American Ground Radio. I'm Stephen Parr with Louis R. Avalone.
I mean, offering amnesty to people that are here illegally, no matter how sympathetic their stories might be, will only incentivize more unlawful border crossings.
Absolutely.
It's going to hurt the working class of our country.
Well, the last time we offered amnesty, actually gave it, was back in the 1980s, right? This is supposed to be a one-time thing. The Democrats talked Ronald Reagan into it. He did it. Guess what happened after we offered that amnesty? Illegal immigration went up. It reached its peak in the 90s and in the 2000s. That didn't stop the flow of illegal immigration. It actually encouraged it because they expect amnesty to come again.
And they won't call it a crisis. Of course, God forbid that you recognize that there's an issue at the southern border.
Yeah.
But if you're going to offer amnesty, you're just going to incentivize more unlawful border crossings. And that is exactly what the Democrats are planning to do with their new budget reconciliation bill.
See, and this is where it really bothers me on this one. The budget reconciliation bill is not supposed to be an immigration bill.
No, and if we're going to talk about immigration, that should be a bipartisan issue.
Right.
Like foreign policy or the military.
And it should have to pass a filibuster in the Senate. The reason why budget bills get to go through without having to have the filibuster passed in the Senate. You don't have to have 60 people in the Senate. The reason you do it in the 50 is because we've got to be able to pay our bills.
No, they want to steamroll the Republican representation.
So they're going to try and shove things into the budget reconciliation bill that have nothing to do with the budget, but that they know the American people themselves do not support.
Right. And that's how much the Democrat Party respects America.
They don't respect Americans.
Because remember, Joe Biden's whole soul is in uniting this country.
That's a lie.
Absolutely. And I was very disappointed to see this, but, Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia, he's on board. He's on board with amnesty.
Really?
He told reporters that Congress should pass an amnesty for people who might have come here the wrong way, but came here for the right reason.
See, this is one of the things with the Democrat Party. Democrats are very Machiavellian, and they believe the ends justify the means. I've always said that you have to do the right thing in the right way for the right reasons, or else you're wrong. The Democrats don't care if you do it the right way. They don't care if you do it for the right reasons. So long as the ends justify the means, they're okay with that.
Okay,
that's immoral behavior.
I understand, but that line of thinking assumes that illegal immigration is a victimless crime.
It's not.
And it's not. Because here's what happens. Immigrants, tend to work in low-skill occupations.
Exactly.
They directly compete, sometimes displace lower-skilled Americans.
That's right.
That depresses wages.
For who?
For the least among us.
Does it depress wages for college graduates?
No.
Does it depress wages for Dr. Fauci? Does it depress wages for Joe Manchin and his staff?
No, these are the same folks that are fighting for the $15 minimum wage or the $25 minimum wage.
But illegal aliens are paid off book a lot of times,
No.
so they're not going to be making minimum wage no matter how high you raise it.
No, your highly skilled, well-educated Americans, they're going to benefit.
They'll be fine.
From amnesty.
Right.
Because it means cheaper housekeepers.
Exactly.
Landscapers, drywallers, other manual labor jobs that folks say that Americans don't want.
They do want them. They're just, they want to get paid for them. Illegal immigration hurts minorities in this country the most. It's not a coincidence that Donald Trump clamped down on illegal immigration more than any other president. You agree with that?
Absolutely.
And when
100%.
he did that, for the first time in American history, the wages for African Americans and Hispanics rose faster than the wages for whites. You think that's a coincidence?
Don't even get me started about that. But here's what Democrats are planning to do. They plan to legalize about 6 million illegal aliens, setting them up to eventually apply and be American citizens.
And see, they don't care about those 6 million people. They care about the 6 million votes they think they will get because of those people.
But you know what? What about the 16 million Americans who remain jobless but want full employment? There's another 4.6 million Americans right now that are underemployed but want a full-time job. What about those folks?
No, the Democrats don't care about that. They don't actually care about people. They care about votes. They want people to vote for them so that they have more power to turn this country into a communist hellhole.
So they're planning to spend $150 billion in this budget towards immigration policies. I mean, this is just the wrong way to go about legislating because, as we talked about earlier, major changes to immigration policy historically happens on a bipartisan basis.
That's right.
And
so that way you're actually doing something that has the consent of the governed. That's in the second sentence of the Declaration of Independence, that a just power from the government only comes from the consent of the governed. When you're sneaking it into a bill that's not being done the right way, do you actually have the consent of the governed? Are you exercising just power, or are you being, by definition, unjust?
The saying goes, those that do not know their history are doomed to repeat it. Why are the Democrats so dead set against learning from history? Look at the European countries.
Okay.
They are losing their national identity.
They are.
I mean, whether it's France or Spain or Greek,
it's not because of immigrants coming in the right way to those countries. That's not a problem. When immigrants come into a country the right way, they adopt to the norms of that country. They become part of that country.
I'm Exhibit A. I'm the first generation son of an Italian immigrant to this country.
Exactly.
But see, in Europe, you've got unchecked immigration, and you've had that for years. Unassimilated migrant workers. I mean, they're openly hostile to their host nation.
And so there are parts of France where the police are afraid to go because of pockets of people who aren't French.
And see, what's interesting, and this is former French President Nicolas Sarkozy. He says, we have been too concerned about the identity of the person who was arriving and not enough about the identity of the country that was receiving them.
That's exactly right.
And see, America's shores once assimilated different cultures and religions into one nation under God.
Right.
Today, that great melting pot is not politically correct.
Exactly.
Because, you want everybody to conform? You want everybody to give up their culture? No, that's not it at all.
We want you to buy into the idea that all people are created equal. We want you to believe in the values set out, the truths, the self-evident truths set out in the second sentence of the Declaration of Independence. We want you to buy into that. But too many people that are coming to this country illegally have no intention of buying into that. They have no idea about that. They just want to get the money and send it back to their family back home.
But see, even dyed-in-the-wool liberals have to see the parallels here with amnesty in our country, in the parallel to the European nations, and the consequences of unchecked, unassimilated immigrants to one's country.
I think they're ignoring those parallels. They want us to be more like Europe.
But see, a nation, if you don't have any borders, you don't have a country.
You don't.
Because a nation is a group of people who share a destiny, and with that destiny, an identity. The truth is that this national identity needs pride and a sense of affection that is expressed to the exclusion of any other nation.
And now you've got to the real heart of the problem. The Democrats are in favor of amnesty for illegals because too many Democrats don't actually have affection for this country. Let's get to the top 3 things you need to know before tomorrow. Well, more Americans died of drug overdoses last year than in any year in American history. Overdose deaths topped 93,000 people, according to data from the CDC. That's a 29% increase over 2019. It means the U.S. saw an average of 11 overdose deaths every hour of every day during 2020.
See, this is another one of those uncalculated or perhaps unplanned consequences, unintentional consequences of what the government's lockdown had on our country.
But it wasn't unpredicted. You and I said this was going to happen the moment the lockdowns went in place.
Right.
Yes?
Absolutely.
Second thing you need to know before tomorrow, the Texas Supreme Court passed voting reform bill being pushed by Republicans. While some Democrat members of the Senate did flee the state to Washington, D.C., joining their counterparts in the House, there were still enough Democrats remaining in Austin to have a quorum and hold a vote in the Senate. But it may not ultimately matter if House Democrats stay out of the state through the end of this special session, as no votes can currently be taken in the state's House until at least 9 Democrats break ranks and return home.
I mean, how immature? I mean, how childlike is that? I mean, you just get up and you leave?
You take your toys and you go home. That's what they've done. But Tucker Carlson did talk about this last night. How can you claim to be defending democracy when you walk out of a democratic institution? How can you claim to be defending voters' rights when you're ignoring the will of the very voters who put you in the House?
Didn't you take an oath to uphold our Constitution?
Third thing you need to know before tomorrow, voters in Alabama elected retired Army Sergeant Kenneth Paschal to fill a vacancy in the Alabama House. Sergeant Paschal will now represent people in Shelby County, which is a mostly suburban area of southeast Birmingham. His victory yesterday makes Paschal the first black Republican to serve in the House since Reconstruction. In a statement, he said, "The voters of District 73 didn't choose me because of the color of my skin. They got to know me. They saw a God-fearing man of integrity who values and defends our Constitution."
Oh, that must really offend the left because he's an Uncle Tom.
No, he's a patriot, and we should treat him as such.